Nick first heard about Jose through Rick, a local preacher who had deep ties in the Cuban community. Jose wasn't just any figure, he was the notorious leader of the Zulus, a gang that operated like a paramilitary organization from inside a Florida state prison. Standing tall, with broad shoulders and light brown skin, Jose carried an intensity that seemed to radiate even from photographs and word-of-mouth accounts. His right-hand man, Alberto, was the cold counterbalance. Short, stocky, dark-skinned, with a reputation for being ruthless and calculating. Together they ran Zulu with precision. Nick had heard enough horror stories to make him hesitant. Yet Rick explained, with calm insistence, why Jose was essential to reaching the Cuban community. Many of the parents were deeply distrustful of outsiders. Some were undocumented, living in constant fear of deportation. Others had been mistreated or ridiculed in schools, jobs, or by local authorities. In this environment, Zulu was more than a gang, it was a shield, a source of protection and conflict resolution. If Jose gave his blessing, parents might finally let their children attend the kids' club. Nick swallowed hard at the thought. He had no idea what it would be like to meet a man whose reputation inspired both fear and respect. Yet he knew it might be the only way to bring these children into a safe, nurturing space. Rick set up the meeting at the prison. As Nick stepped through the layers of razor wire and security, his stomach twisted with nerves. Guards frisked them, then guided them through a metal detector, and finally into a stark white room filled with folding tables and chairs. Moments later, 2 guards escorted Jose in. Rick approached him, and they embraced in a warm, manly hug that belied the hardened persona Jose had outside these walls. When Nick shook his hand, he felt a surprisingly firm grip, a silent assertion of authority. They sat down, and Rick facilitated the conversation, first catching up with Jose on mundane matters before pivoting to the Cuban community. Nick explained the club's mission, emphasizing its programs and resources designed to help children navigate challenges, develop skills, and grow into responsible adults. Jose listened intently, asking questions with a sharp curiosity, the kind that seemed to scan beyond words for hidden motives. Nick knew he had to tread carefully, but when he mentioned the concept of legacy, the idea that Jose could shape a positive future for his community, he saw a flicker of something unfamiliar in the gang leader's eyes. For the first time, Jose seemed to consider a world beyond his prison walls, beyond survival and violence. The visit ended too soon. Guards announced that their time was up. They shook hands once more, Nick urging him to think about the club's potential. "Just remember," he said, "you have the power to make a positive change in your community. That is an awesome legacy to leave behind." It was the only face-to-face meeting they ever had. Afterward, they would maintain a sporadic correspondence, letters and calls that gradually built a fragile bridge of trust. It was in one of these letters that Jose revealed the story that shaped everything, his family's harrowing escape from Cuba. Nick read the words slowly, savoring each one, knowing that they revealed the deepest roots of Jose's pain and resilience. The morning had begun innocuously enough. The sky over Havana was the perfect shade of azure, dotted with cotton-white clouds. The sun reflected off the calm waves of the Gulf Stream, as if inviting the small family into a false sense of security. Jose's father had meticulously prepared the journey. The skiff was old but seaworthy, or so he thought. Jose, at 14, climbed aboard with his younger siblings, 10-year-old brother Miguel and 7-year-old sister Sofia, while his parents adjusted supplies for what they assumed would be a 2-day journey to Florida. They started rowing with determination, their movements synchronized like a team with a single purpose. But soon, it became apparent that the ocean did not bend to human will. The currents were stronger than anticipated, pulling them off course. The sun climbed higher, relentless in its heat, and their water supply dwindled far too quickly. By midday of the 4th day, exhaustion had set in. Muscles cramped, lips cracked, eyes blurred. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, but dehydration was the real enemy. Jose's mother, sensing the danger, took control of the water ration. She divided every drop with surgical precision, trying to stretch their limited supply. Yet the sun was merciless. Her own hands blistered as she shielded the children, her voice a calm whisper amid the chaos. "We will get through this. We must survive." By nightfall, the skiff had drifted into a haze of darkness and uncertainty. They huddled together, shivering from exposure to the salty wind, unable to sleep, unable to see beyond the edges of their fragile vessel. Jose tried to stay awake, gripping the sides of the boat, willing the stars above to guide them. But his body betrayed him, muscles giving way, consciousness slipping like sand through fingers. When he awoke, the scene was surreal. U.S. Coast Guard officers were pulling him onto a larger ship, their movements methodical but gentle. His family was there too, but the details were fragmented in his memory. Sheets covered their bodies, rescuers working with a quiet urgency. Somewhere deep inside, fear mingled with relief. The ocean, which had been both cradle and captor, now seemed like a distant nightmare. Nick felt a pang of sorrow as he read Jose's recounting of that day. He imagined the teenager's terror, the helplessness, the fragile thread between life and death. This experience, Nick realized, was a crucible that forged both fear and resolve. It explained much about the man who had become the leader of Zulu, a man who had learned to protect, to control, to survive at all costs. Jose's letters continued to reveal layers of his story. Nick understood now why the Cuban community both feared and respected Zulu. Jose's life had been defined by survival, by the constant negotiation between power and vulnerability. And yet, beneath the veneer of violence and authority, there was a man who could see beyond himself, capable of supporting a program that nurtured the next generation. Over time, Jose became one of the club's staunchest advocates. His endorsement alone dramatically increased attendance, as parents who had been skeptical now trusted him implicitly. Children came eagerly, and for many, it was a first taste of stability and encouragement in their lives. Nick watched the impact with awe, knowing that a bridge had been built, not merely between him and Jose, but between fear and hope, past and future. In subsequent letters, Jose confided more about his reflections on legacy. He wondered whether the choices he had made and the life he had lived could be reframed in the service of something larger than survival. The notion that his past could contribute to a positive future was a revelation. It reshaped not only how he viewed himself but how he engaged with the community that had once seemed beyond reach. Nick often thought about that day in the prison, the tense air, the fleeting moments of conversation. If he had not taken the risk, if he had not trusted Rick's guidance, he might never have glimpsed the complexity behind Jose's reputation. And more importantly, countless Cuban children might have continued to miss out on the chance to grow in a safe, nurturing environment.